Even in the midst of darkness, it's amazing what one light can do. Okay, so what is the deal with that bit about the one light in the middle of darkness that I had at the beginning of this video? Well, it was an image that I thought of as I was thinking about St. Edward, whose feast day we celebrate today, October 13. So happy feast day to all of you. Happy feast day to us, our parish and our school. We are blessed to be dedicated to a holy saint such as St. Edward. And as I said in my homilies this weekend, it's good that we are able to celebrate the patronage of our parish. So October 13 is in the traditional calendar is the feast of St. Edward, and so this is our patronal feast. And the whole thing about the light in the middle of darkness, what one light can do in the middle of darkness is something that I thought about when I thought about St. Edward. As I said in the homily, I talked about him this past weekend. St. Edward was born in the year 1003 in England, and as a young boy, Vikings had invaded England, and many people were carried off into exile, Edward and his family included, and they were exiled to Normandy. And what young Edward found when he arrived there in Normandy was a land and a culture that was completely devoid of God. So it was a pagan culture, it was a hedonistic culture. There was a lot of paganism and impurities of all kinds, and this is where Edward and his family ended up being exiled. And it was a place that was so different from where he was from, because Edward was brought up in the Catholic faith. And really there were one of two responses that Edward could have made with the situation that he found himself in. He could have simply given in to the culture of his time, sort of a when in Rome, do as the Romans do. He could have given in and began to live as everyone else did, that pagan hedonistic culture, thereby of course abandoning his faith. But thanks be to God, he didn't do that, and we are grateful that St. Edward didn't give in to the culture of his time. Instead, he doubled down on his faith. Rather than give in to the culture of his time, he resolved to live his faith ever more faithfully. He resolved to maintain and preserve his purity. So rather than give in to the hedonism of the culture, he vowed to preserve his purity and stay faithful to God, no matter how long he would have to live in this exile. And it ended up being 27 years. And you can imagine that many of the people along the way, perhaps many of them lost faith, they lost hope. They wondered and wondered when they would be able to leave this exile, when would this exile ever be over? And maybe after a number of years, some people just sort of gave in and lost hope. But St. Edward didn't. Even though he lived in a very dark culture, he vowed to be one light. And don't underestimate what one light can do in the midst of darkness. And who knows, perhaps Edward was a model and an example for someone. Perhaps Edward's desire to stay faithful was an inspiration to someone else. Certainly, staying faithful and preserving his purity helped his own soul. And certainly when he was able to return back to England, where he was crowned king, he was able to, because he preserved that faith even while in exile, he was able to bring that faith even more so into the English culture. But how many people did it inspire to stay faithful themselves? And I think that's a good example for us as well. You and I have not been carried off into exile. However, this country, this nation that we love, is becoming more and more pagan. And it is becoming a very dark culture. And I think the temptation for a lot of people is to lose faith and to lose hope. And that's why St. Edward reminds us that I must be a light in this darkness. You must be a light in this darkness. And we might think that we are only one small light, but if I am a light and you are a light and we can get other people around us to be a light, then, as I said, don't underestimate what one small light or even a few small lights can do even in a dark culture. You and I have to be those lights in the midst of a dark and corrupted world. And St. Edward shows us the eternal value of persevering in that light. So we are blessed to have such a great example for us here at St. Edward, a patron saint in heaven who can pray for us and intercede for us. And so as we celebrate this great feast of St. Edward today, October 13, let's offer to him our prayers. Let's ask St. Edward to intercede for us to God, that God will continue to bless and protect our parish, our school, all of our families, that we may continue to persevere in growing in holiness all the days of our life. God bless you.